Coming to you live from the offices of Chapter One Films in Charlotte, North Carolina, this is the 4D Podcast with your hosts, Nathaniel Levinson, Greg Prinz, and Liam Maxwell. A new dimension in entertainment. This is the 4D Podcast.
Retainer.
I completely forgot about that scene.
Isn't that
What
a great
what
one?
an amazing...
And you've been waiting 30 weeks to drop that line. It's like,
30, well, more than 30 weeks, 30 episodes.
Liam, we can't... What are we right now?
We're so back.
We're so back.
The
and
vibes are high in the room. And we got a, I was about to say, better third. Yeah, I'm going to say it. We got a better third.
I mean, we trash you every time you're not here.
Yeah, it's
so
true.
I feel like it's only fair that you throw a little shade on Nathaniel.
We got a better third of us.
We have a better-looking co-host with us today. We have Sir Alan... I don't know if I know your last name.
peas.
Peace.
Or peas. Like the veggie.
Like the
vegetable.
Okay. Adam Pease. We've got Adam Pease with us, ladies and gentlemen. Alan. Did I say Adam? Twice?
Some dude.
Greg
Some
can't
dude
read.
who's not
Greg
Nathaniel.
can't read well.
I don't read great.
Yeah, he doesn't read good.
My friend's wicked smart. I'm not.
If you weren't reading it, you would have known. You would have said it just fine.
Yeah, he would have. He was overthinking it.
Yeah, it was a lot. I shouldn't have had you write it down for me. Oh man,
We're back.
we're back. We have real exciting movie this week. So Liam said just before we went live, you've been waiting how long? How long?
However many episodes we've had of this. I had to get through some Cinderellas. Had to get through some Wild Wild West. What was that one that we did with you? Spaghetti.
Oh my God.
Spaghetti Sunrise.
I'm out. Spaghetti sunrise.
Alan had been waiting 25 weeks for that.
It's
one.
true.
Years.
Yeah, Alan's been waiting his whole life to talk about that movie. So, I mean, he still has. I mean, you got to wait your turn.
They didn't
That's
have
true.
podcasts
No, I get it, and I
when I was
did.
watching that movie. It just wasn't an option. I had to wait a
true.
long time.
I'm going to go out on a limb and say that might have been the only podcast ever on that movie. I don't know if anybody's
Yeah.
ever talked about
Yeah.
that movie,
The
the
good news
length of time that we did.
Is if someone is looking for a podcast on that movie, we will be the first result. We'll be the only result.
If there is a comeback for Rustler's Rhapsody in the world,
You remember the name.
We
See
are
the audience,
yeah, of
whoever's
course.
listening. Well, what movie is this?
Good callback.
Spaghetti Sunrise.
Oh, we-
Look up Spaghetti
You're like
Sunrise.
Googling Spaghetti Sunrise.
we will definitely hit it big. But we are not watching Rustler's Rhapsody or Spaghetti Sunrise this week. What are we watching, Liam? Tell the people.
We are watching. Can they see this? Good Will Hunting. I'm wearing a Good Will Hunting shirt. Actually.
Where in the hell did you get that shirt?
Ben Affleck, Matt Damon behind the scenes. We're watching Good Will Hunting.
I mean,
And,
it was great.
yeah, I, as everyone knows here, exaggerate often. Is that fair to say, Greg? Everything's the best or everything's the worst.
You guys suck.
But one thing I've never said is another movie being my favorite movie of all time, because that belongs to Good Will
Liam
Hunting.
Maxwell's Hot Takes.
Something I don't play around with. I don't say that might be my favorite movie ever.
I
Good Will
think that's
Hunting
pretty
is my
accurate
favorite movie
though,
ever.
because so Liam's top 10 is like 500 movies deep, but his number one movie, it's one movie.
It's static.
It's been
Yeah.
Good Will Hunting as long as I've known you.
It's been static since the first time I ever watched it. It
Yeah.
didn't take any time to like digest.
So
I pretty much watched it and I was like, that's my favorite movie
So
ever.
something we probably, I don't know if we have touched on this on the show.
Were you an orphan?
But
The emotion of the movie really
he's gonna
got
blow
me.
up on you. He's gonna
It's
blow
not
up
your
on you.
fault. There are other movies. It's not your fault.
If there was, if
It's
there
not
wasn't,
your fault.
I know. Don't fuck with me. Not
With
you,
me.
Sean.
Not you, Sean. So Liam likes Bostonian accents. That is,
I do.
If there is a movie, if you're watching chat right now, if you're watching, you're like, oh, there's that movie with the Bostonian accent. Put it in chat. I guarantee you, Liam's gonna be like, love that movie.
Yeah,
And if he
great
hasn't
one.
seen it, he will love that movie. So chat,
Automatically.
throw in all your Bostonian accent movies in there. There's already two that I'm thinking of, and he likes both of them.
If
So
there's a drone shot of the city of Boston at some point during the movie, I'll probably love it.
well, because like there's the obvious. This is a great movie, right? Because I respect it too as being just a phenomenal movie. Acting at every level is good. I mean, there's not a bad scrap of acting in that movie. Phenomenal. But what makes it like other than is it just the fact that hey, here's a good movie just pumped with a whole bunch of like Boston feels?
So Boston is it is an aspect of me loving the movie. I love the city of Boston for sure. Matt Damon is probably my favorite actor ever.
But is it your favorite actor because he does a lot of Boston accents?
Who's to say? Who's to say? If you want to dive into that, I'm not quite sure. But I'm a Matt Damon. I have season tickets to Matt Damon. Any movie he puts out, I'm first in line there. And also Robin Williams.
Yes.
I mean, goodness gracious.
See, I think that Robin, I don't know. I don't think this is a hot take. Maybe it's a hot take. I don't know. But I think that he might be the GOAT of acting. I really think that he's.
I'm fine with that.
I think that the way that he acts in movies is how people should try to like model them as actors. Because, like, and we've had this conversation a few times. So I am not a big fan of the over the top, psychotic like. See, Joaquin Phoenix right now, that's like everybody's wet dream right now is Joaquin Phoenix. They're like, oh, dude, just put him in a room and give him, don't let him eat for a week and then throw him out there on stage and then he's phenomenal. Look at him. He's acting like a crazy person. Hey, look in this movie, he was crying the whole time and throwing up. It's beautiful. And it's like
I can't help but wonder if that's his default setting right now. I don't think he's acting. He looks like he's just a real broken dude in real life. That bleeds into the.
I'm in the same way, and I'm just like, I just think people just are so obsessed with that kind of thing right now. And in my opinion, I find it much more impressive when you do a really good job acting as a relatively normal person, right? Like Robin Williams in this movie was probably the most grounded person out of all of them. Obviously, Will takes the big character arc of being really adolescent and troubled to, finding, happiness at the end. You have the very successful mathematician who's kind of like, he's successful, obviously, but he's kind of an ass. And then you have Robin Williams, who is effectively the only character who's like worked through his stuff
I was
already.
thinking authentic.
Yeah.
He's true.
Yeah.
He's not putting on a facade. He's transparent about his stuff.
And so I think externally you would look at that and be like, all right, well, he's kind of the one out of all of them who doesn't necessarily have like as far as acting wise, doesn't seem like an overwhelming role. But I don't know, when he acts it, I'm like, it's perfect. Like,
But
it's
that's
just
yes.
He's so perfect in that role where he doesn't overdo it. He's not overdoing the acting. He doesn't have a scene where he's twitching and falling apart in the corner. Like if Joaquin Phoenix is that character, I can't, like, he's not pulling that off.
Yeah, and I don't know if you guys have ever seen Dead Poets Society.
Oh yeah.
Same vibe.
Yeah.
With him. And I actually want to piggyback off something Alan said about Joaquin Phoenix, how I think that's probably just how he is in real life. I think that's how Robin Williams is in real life, in the sense that he has so much joy, right? So much outward joy.
At that age, anyway.
But there is like a sadness.
He did die. I don't know.
Well, that's what I'm saying.
I don't mean that. I mean,
that's what I'm saying. There is a sadness behind Sean.
Yeah.
Right? There is a sadness behind the professor. I forget what his name is in Dead Poets Society. And it turns out that is how he was in real life.
Yeah.
Rest in peace, right?
Yeah.
He was objectively such a joyous person.
Well, they say that a lot of comics are kind of tortured
Yeah.
like that.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
they make the best because they're making light of pain.
Exactly.
They understand pain more than a lot of people.
But he was
and then
harboring
they
a lot of
can-
pain, right?
Yeah.
So I wanted to tie that in because it seems like that could be.
Well, in a lot of his roles, at least Robin Williams, I think of like Patch Adams. There's another movie where he's a psychologist, and I think it's Dustin Hoffman, or is it another one of those big name guys? Is a patient in the psych ward?
It's not like it's not a thriller, right? Because he has one with Al Pacino that's a thriller.
No, it's not. But now that you say that, I think it might be Al Pacino. Is either Al Pacino or Dustin Hoffman is the person in the psych ward, and it's based off a true story. He was like the first ever guy to get somebody with palsy or whatever to stop twitching or something. I don't know. This is about that doctor. He plays him. He has the same feel. It's the same feel where it's like he's so simple and just like proper in the way he talks, and it comes across as so authentic. And like, that's what you should do when you act, is you should come across authentic. Like you should come across like you're a real person saying those things.
Totally.
And I don't buy into the, amazing acting is when somebody's just like so insanely grotesque that it's like nobody else could do that. And I'm like, I'm not really sure what I have to gauge that against. Like if you're playing a crazy person, maybe you're doing a good job, maybe you aren't. I don't know how crazy people act. Like you can kind of do what you want.
Is it Jared Leto?
Jared Leto.
Leto. Yeah. From all accounts, he sounds like he's pretty batty in real life.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you're just...
Yeah.
That's more than just method acting. It's kind of like you're not acting.
Right.
That's what you are.
Well, like Christian Bale's a method actor. I think Christian Bale's great, but Christian Bale plays a lot of grounded characters. He inevitably gets super into his characters. I think older Leonardo DiCaprio was like that, but now I think Leo is way more into the roles where he just kind of gets over the top and gets super weird and quirky. But I just think that's what people. When people are like, it's like Academy Award bait. It's just like, play somebody, play some really sick, twisted, oppressed person, and then it's just gonna be like, yes, yeah, that's the best. And I'm sitting there, I'm like, no, Robin Williams is like a class act of how you should act. Like he is, in my opinion, the quintessential when you think really, really amazing actors. I've never seen him in a role. Have you ever seen Hook? You've never seen Hook?
No.
You dirty dog. You seen Hook?
Well, yeah.
Okay, it's amazing, dude.
Steven
Spielberg,
and Dustin Hoffman, who's also good in that.
Steven Spielberg directs it. John Williams does the music. We have Dustin Hoffman and Robin Williams. Phenomenal movie.
Are you sure we haven't watched that?
We've never watched it. Yes, I've gotten on your case several times about this.
Okay, fair enough.
But he's phenomenal in that. And like that movie, again, it's goofy and it allows him to play more of his humor. But in the serious moments, he's like he can switch it like nothing. I mean, he's just incredible.
Did you guys see 1 Hour Photo?
Is that the one where the cover is him looking through
possibly
picture? I don't know, looking
he
through
works
like film?
in like a Walgreens,
Okay, that is the cover. I think
second-rate photo development kind of place.
Okay, I've never seen it.
happen to
Did
develop
he win
film.
an award for that or something?
I doubt it.
Okay,
It was odd. It was bizarre. But that was a case of a comedian doing something that you didn't expect from comedy. Where, well, I'm not going to spoil it. He kills people.
I think I knew that. Like I think
there was another one that was kind of sci-fi, and I'm pretty sure it was Robin Williams, where it was a near future thing where he was responsible for editing the memories of the recently deceased and then broadcasting them, and during the funeral or the remembrance ceremony,
actually
or
sounds
whatever they call
awesome.
that, which is an interesting scene. And then it's expressly illegal to tap into your own memories or other one that people that are living or something. There's a very narrow framework for where this is allowed to occur. But he's got some kind of recessed event that he's just dying to dig up, because he needs to get to the truth of this thing in his past.
That sounds
That was
awesome.
an odd one. That was a little. I'm pretty sure that was also Robin Williams.
What was it called? Do you remember? That sounds
Google.
like right up my alley. Like that sounds awesome. That sounds super cool.
It was interesting. I don't remember the quality. I was also kind of young when I saw it. And speaking of, and the first time I saw this, I had to be late teens or early 20s when I first saw Good Will Hunting, and my maturity just wasn't there for it.
I was gonna say
It might not be now.
I
It might
watched.
not ever be
I
there.
watched it with.
But I did like it significantly more.
I watched it with Alan
last
a week ago. Yeah, you were like, oh, I've seen it a long time ago, and then you were just like, yeah, that hit a lot harder now.
Yeah.
Because it does. I mean, I'd have to agree. It's I think it probably would fly under the radar. I in the same boat had seen it when I was in college, I think, and I was like, it's almost like you latch on to different things. I was like, oh, it's cool because he's a genius, and like that's kind of cool because he's like this kind of this rundown guy. Nobody would expect it, and that element is cool. But I kind of missed all the emotional beats of the whole movie, and then when you watch it again when you're older, you're like, oh man.
And they hit you like left and right, dude. There is no reprieve. Like it is scene after scene. I mean, it's so well written.
Yeah.
Scene after scene is you're glued. Like there's not a lull, at least from my perspective. There's no lull in this movie. Like me and my dad always like talk about rewatchability in a movie. So if a movie's on TV and you tune in before a big part, you're like, okay, well, I got to watch it until this part, right? Good Will Hunting, I could tune in at any point of this movie, and I'd be like, well, I got to watch this part. And then once I get to that part, I'm like, well, I got to watch the bench scene. It's like, and then I'm done, and I fly through it. And deservedly so, Ben Affleck and Matt Damon won Best Original Screenplay at the Oscars for Good Will Hunting.
Yeah.
Ben Affleck, the youngest winner. I don't know if he still is. I know at the time he was the youngest winner for Best Original Screenplay, 27 years old.
So they wrote the screenplay for this.
Yep.
The two of them?
They wrote the movie.
That's I did not know that.
They wrote the movie. Yep. How
That's
insane is
so
that?
what? Because I know the director is the one that did Finding Forrester,
Gus Van
which we
Sant.
watched, and Finding Forrester is
That's just a couple years removed from this, right? Did it come after?
It's kind of the same deal. It's the same story told differently. So it's about a black kid in the inner city, and he's like a writing prodigy, but he's also a stud basketball player, and because his grades are so good, they actually want to move him from the inner city to like this really ritzy school. And so he goes there, and he actually simultaneously stumbles upon Sean Connery, who is like this world-renowned writer that everybody thinks is probably dead, but he's a hermit now. And he finds him in this in one of these rooms, and he slowly realizes that this guy is a writer. And he's like, "Hey, well, can you help me tutor me? Like, look at some of my stuff." And Sean Connery starts looking at his writings, and he's like, "This is amazing." So he starts tutoring him, and he starts writing all this stuff for his new, super high intense prep school. And they think it's so good that he's got to be cheating. So they're like, "Okay, we're going to kick you out because this is a clearly plagiarized. It's all from stuff, And Sean Connery had been like, "Hey, anything we write here stays here. Don't use it for school." But he takes one of the papers that he wrote for Sean Connery and he turns it in. And they're like, "Oh, this is all plagiarizing off of so-and-so, the great so-and-so." And he's like, "No, it's not plagiarizing." And so he's about to get kicked out of school, but then Sean Connery comes out of essentially comes back from the dead, and everybody's so shocked. Like all the students and the teachers are like, "Who the heck is this guy?" And he comes and he reads this whole thing for the whole school is just
like Surf's Up with the penguins.
Same vibe.
See, he's back. He's back. I'm with you. Yeah. Just like Surf's Up, penguins, animated.
Should have said that. You should have started out with that.
Anyways, the crux of the movie, the final thing of the movie is that he reads this whole piece and everybody's like just in awe and amazed, and he's just like, "I didn't write that, so and so Forrester did," and everybody's like blown away by it. So, anyway, so it's about him becoming a writer instead of pursuing his basketball dreams, but same idea. And then Matt Damon makes a cameo at the end as the lawyer.
I loved it. I was like, this movie rules.
But it's very. So I thought that the writer was the director because he wrote that one. But Matt Damon and Brad Pitt.
Yeah.
Oh wow.
And Ben Affleck. How crazy. Doesn't that add a layer to
Not
it?
Brad Pitt,
How
sorry.
impressive is that? They were 20-year-olds.
It's wild because they were so young.
That was their first. I mean, I'm sure they had roles prior, but that was their coming out party. Was that movie? And they wrote it. And I should know.
Family Guy took a dig at this, where they were showing Affleck is on the couch and he rips ass and says, "Why don't you go ahead and put that in the script?" And it's all times it just shows Matt Damon grinding away at the computer writing the script. I think this is really good. And why don't you put this in, Matt?
You know what's funny? I did read that Ben Affleck was worried that he would get pigeonholed as like the dumb friend to Matt Damon
Because of the role.
because of this movie.
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, I mean, he does a good job, but it's like
Sometimes you
he's
can do it too
definitely he's definitely like left in the dust as far as acting. Like he's fifth or sixth as far as like well done acting
Yeah.
in the movie.
But I will say, I will say he delivers some of my favorite lines though.
with what?
Like the one line he has, and we can get into the synopsis.
Yeah.
of it too,
So
and stuff,
why don't you give just a brief
Yeah,
one? Don't go
yeah.
into the details. We'll go into the details as we talk. But just,
Yeah.
just what's the overall of the movie?
overall movie. So Will Hunting is a kid in Southie, South Boston. Grows up around his friends, his just like shenanigan friends. They drink beers, they work construction, they get in fights, like Southie Boston vibes. He's a secret genius. He's an absolute mathematical genius. He works at MIT as a janitor. And throughout the movie, we get introduced to the professor at MIT who puts these problems on the board for his students to solve. Matt Damon secretly is solving them overnight as the janitor. So there's this big discovery phase where the professor finds out it was Matt Damon. Matt Damon gets arrested for getting in a street fight. And so the clause is, in order to avoid jail time, he has to be trained by Professor Lambeau as well as do therapy sessions, because Professor Lambeau sees this mathematical genius and realizes he would waste away in prison. He thinks he would waste away hanging out with the friends he currently does. But that's where we get introduced to Sean McGuire, the therapist. And really the rest of the movie is about Sean and Will working through their issues. And yeah, I don't want to get too granular, but I think it's important to note that Will was abused as a kid, and that is where all of this stems from, right? That's where all the self-sabotage, like you think he's a genius, why can't he do something good with it? It's because he got very deep-seated issues, trust issues. It shows its face in his relationship with Minnie Driver's character, Skylar. It shows his face in all these roles, all these job opportunities he gets offered because he's a genius, and him just writing them off. But the rest of the movie is him and Sean working through this together, and at the end of the day, he is able to work through those issues and brings us to an ending that I think is so elite. So elite. But I think that's the broad strokes.
Is that what the kids are saying now? Elite?
Yeah.
Things are elite now?
I guess I'm a kid. I don't feel like it, but yeah, that's I mean, it's really Sean and Will are at the heart of this, right? And his friends from Southie Boston are supporting him along the way. Skylar, his girlfriend, is trying to support him, but he keeps pushing her off. And then Professor Lambeau is kind of in it for his own accolades. But those are the main characters of the story that drive everything.
Yeah. And so, I mean, you touched on a bit of why you like this movie, which is great. So, Alan, we watched it together. You mentioned that you watched it a long time ago, and you watched it now and feel like you got maybe more out of it. But what were some of the big takeaways you think from this movie?
I don't know about
Or things that stood out to
big
you?
The first time I saw it, one thing when it's not your fault, it's not your fault. Yeah, that was a powerful scene, and it is more so now. But I was kind of thinking about when I first saw it, this would have been, like I said, late 90s, maybe early 2000s. It's unlikely that I saw it when it first came out, so it had to have been early 2000s. And at that time, this is just my memory of things in rural Ohio. Had my pops been to see watch it with me, which he almost certainly was not, he would have kind of gawked at that scene, like, what is this? Oh, man, was this just stand up straight, Nancy. What are you crying about?
Yeah.
Like, and that was the thing. You as a dude, you stayed composed. You don't admit that kind of stuff. You push that down. You keep it recessed, and that's your coping. Get deep into the juice or something else, but don't cry, for God's sakes. What are you doing on another man? And so I was thinking, like, that stood out to me when I first saw it. It just kind of, I didn't know how to really process that, and I was too young to be watching that kind of thing anyway. A dude being vulnerable these days, if it had just come out, that wouldn't have been, the scene might not have even been there, or at least not in the way that it was framed. For one, you wouldn't have had to have had a therapist tell you it's not your fault. You would have been miles ahead finding all the ways that it wasn't your fault because you're a victim, right?
Yeah.
We've been
Regardless of
so
what it
unhealthy
is.
in the other direction.
And odds are he didn't even need therapy, but he's a victim. Therefore, I'm getting a therapist. He wouldn't have had to have been
We
pushed into
punting
it.
children, and it would not be his fault.
The 20 years and what's happened in society between those two, from the time it was made to
Yeah.
now, that was seeing it in a different light, and it was okay. On this side of it, yeah, he's vulnerable. He's been repressing some stuff. He needs to work through it. And here's this therapist, and he is the guy because he himself was a Southie, whatever that means. I'm not up to Bostonian.
Southie.
It's just,
South
Bostonian lore, but
Southie is
I'm
like
about
the
to get an
slums,
education.
right? I
I
imagine?
could catch that it was a rough.
Yeah,
South.
it's a rough,
for sure.
it's a rough and tough area of Boston.
Is that where you're from, or
I wish.
Wow.
you not wish you were from the south
And the class
side of
divide
Boston?
that this movie also pitches between the haves and have-nots.
Hmm.
You were one of the haves, is that it?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Wishing that you had
he
an
was the
excuse.
guy
Yeah,
at
yeah.
the Harvard bar who walked in and
Right.
was like,
Oh, come
Will,
on.
You had longer hair then.
Come on.
he had long blonde.
Doing that
Not that
freshman take
cool.
on economics.
You show up to a bar, you try to make my friend look like an idiot.
You have any original thoughts of your own?
That's a good scene too, because as I got a late night task. You're coming in. You're getting on the podcast. And I had to do
call.
some homework fast, right? Okay, and start rethinking about the movie. And it occurred to me, you've probably already got this in your notes. I can't wait to just take this away from you.
Yes.
But that scene, he goes into the bar and he puts that long-haired. He wasn't a freshman, but he was. Like you said, he
Yeah.
put that dude to task, cut him down to the knees. You've never had an original thought. You read about this in this book, page 89.
He
right?
cuts him off
like
as
and
he's
he just-
talking and
yeah.
finishes his sentence.
Exactly. Yeah. Finishes his whole train of thought.
Yeah.
But once you become a junior, you're going to be citing this dude. And it's just you got nothing,
Yeah.
right? And then that's. I'm not going to say verbatim, but that's the same way that Sean ends up cutting down Will. Everything you know about life isn't experience based. You got nothing anecdotal. You read about all of it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that was
Yeah.
that was a good.
I
I wonder
Yeah,
in
it's
that
great.
moment, are you supposed to think that Will knew that about himself, and he didn't like seeing it in that other dude, or if he just hadn't yet put that together. I'm betting that Will, in all his genius, hadn't yet put it together, that he's using his wicked smarts to hide, to push things away, to ignore.
I bet he
his
just
own
didn't even
reality.
think about. He didn't even think about that kind of stuff. It was
Yeah.
easier for him to just drink beers with his buddies than
Yeah.
like really explore what's going on in
Sure.
his own mindset.
Well, it's like because I always felt the same way. Whereas like I see that scene and it's one of the more famous scenes. It's very rewatchable.
I forgot all about
there's
it.
There's a sense of like, oh, got him, because like you're just happy to see him put this
Yeah.
guy to shame. But at the same time, if you really think about it, you're like, well, he's not necessarily being original either. He's all he's doing is quoting books too, and he actually didn't even give his own thoughts. He didn't give his original thoughts
Yep.
at all. He just keeps shooting him
Even
down.
in that own argument against that dude,
Even
he gave other
all he does
people's-
is shoots him down and says, "You're going to have more unoriginal thoughts." And he's like, "And I'll be original." And you're like, "Oh yeah, he got him." And then later you're like, "Hey, he didn't really talk about anything original."
And then he finished with, "We can take it outside."
Yeah.
Because he's real scrappy,
Yeah.
and he's physical like that, which is interesting. And that's, again, why Sean is the perfect dude. Not only is he Southie, but he's very practical. He's at least used to be a man's man. He was in the Army or some such, maybe the Marines. He had seen combat, watched his
Friends had
buddies die,
died
that
in his
kind of
hand.
thing.
And
So-
I mean, he's physical with him too. He grabs him by the throat
Yeah.
and he's like, "I'll end you."
Choke held him over his own bookcase. He was the man for the task.
Yeah.
And all those tactics were
And it's really
That was
good. It's really great. Like the "It's Not Your Fault" scene. It only works because of the build up to that. It only works because Will was just messing around with like 4 therapists before that and just absolutely destroying their minds. Like the one time he's like, what was the one therapist where he said he was having like gay dreams
Right.
or something?
Yeah.
And the guy's like, all right, I can't do this.
I got to be on national television
Yeah.
in 5 minutes. On
Yeah,
that.
yeah. But there was something about Sean that made him kind of take it a little more seriously, even if he was fucking around with him in the beginning.
Who was not in high academia. He was
Right,
in like community
right.
college.
And there was something about Will that Sean loved, the challenge of digging into that. And we find out it's because Sean was also abused, and I'm sure he saw a lot of the similar traits in Will that he probably had to work through as well.
Without the brilliance.
Yeah.
Without he wasn't afflicted with the wicked smarts.
Exactly.
I love the scene where he's just like, my dad would put a wrench, a switch, and a belt.
good.
And he's like, I'd have to go with the switch. He's like, I always pick the wrench. He's like, why? Cause fuck him.
That's why.
That's why.
Yeah. I want to. So the bench scene. I want to
Yeah.
dig into that a little bit because
Yeah.
Alan touched on it. But
Huge scene.
the dialogue in that scene is unbelievable.
Yeah.
It's unbelievable. And I do want to mention that I was in Boston this past weekend
Here it is.
I hear they kind of memorialized
with
that,
Ray, and we sat on the bench.
No, that's
The
awesome.
bench is real. The bench is real. I'll show you guys a photo of it.
Did you look at her and you were like, listen,
Yeah.
Did you cut her
listen,
down?
I put my arm around her. I was like, okay, Sean and Will didn't do that. Actually, let's make it realistic.
be like, listen, I could take you on these dates, but if I did, you'd probably just, buy all the appetizers like you knew what you were
Yeah.
doing. But it's not. You don't really care about. Like, what are you talking
No,
about?
we have to go to the bench immediately. But no, I mean, it's so good. And I think that's when that's a huge turning point for them because he cuts him down and Will has had a smart-ass response to everything.
It's the first time he was shut down. He's speechless.
Didn't say,
He's
he
got
basically has
nothing.
no dialogue. I don't know if he says a
No,
word.
no, I was
going to
say you said great dialogue, and I'm like, it's only Robin Williams.
I think he just not. I actually don't even think he
He's
nods.
not even
'cause-
making eye contact.
He
He
does
just
not.
trails
He's-
off.
he's
staring
just-
at the ground.
Yeah, he's
shut down.
Jaw open, just
Yep.
staring at him.
That was the turning point, and I think that's such a huge scene. And there's so many just rich lines from Robin Williams as far as like, I mean, you could see how that would hit you so hard as a genius who gets most of his material through books and other scholars. Like it comes back towards the end when Sean asks Will, "Who do you have in your life that challenges you?" And he's like,
Tons. I got tons.
I got
So
tons.
many
Look, I
people.
got all
Yeah,
my
yeah.
boys.
Yeah.
He's like, they would lay down their lives for you. That's loyalty. He's like, but they're not challenging you.
"No, there's yeah." And then Will says, I forget exactly the scholars he mentions.
Yeah,
but
he's
it's
like,
bunch of them.
Nietzsche
Yeah,
and a
bunch
bunch
of
of other
dead people.
guys.
he's like,
Yeah.
they're dead.
Yeah. No, I think that it's also so obviously in this scene, Robin Williams starts. He really pushes Will because Will is a genius and walks over most anybody he talks to. He just throttled a bunch of therapists, and finally he gets to this guy, and he can't quite. He pisses him off big time in their first meeting. Pisses Robin Williams off. And then he takes him outside and they sit down and he's doing it again. He's like, "Oh, what are we? You're gonna start, proposing to me out here?"
That's his
And
only
it's like-
dialogue, I think, is the first, right?
And then he just goes, "Listen, sport, and he slowly gets more intimate with the names he calls him. By the end, he's calling him son. But at this point, I think he just calls him sport. And he's just like, you're just a kid. He's like, I was really, really upset. He's like, and then it hit me. You're just a kid, and you don't know anything. He's like, you've never even left South Boston.
Yeah.
He's like, if I asked you about war, you'd quote me all this stuff. He's like, but you'd never held your dead friend in your arms and told him it was going to be all right when he breathed his last breath. If I asked you about love, you'd probably do that. Anyways, so he just totally shuts him down. But then at the end, he's like, so listen, if you want to talk about you, I'm here for it. I'm interested.
Yeah.
He's like, let's do it. He's like, but that's all we're gonna do.
Yeah.
And then he's like balls in your court.
It's like, I can't learn anything about you that I can't read an Oliver Twist novel.
Yeah.
Unless you're in.
Yeah.
Your move, Chief.
Yeah. Your move, Chief. There it is. He gets up and walks away. Yeah. Super powerful. And he doesn't let off, because then Will gets back in, and then he's like, okay, I made it in the door now, but now we won't talk. And he's like, oh, I'm gonna beat him.
Yeah.
And he's just like, then he's like, what are you guys having who's going to talk first, a pissing contest? And he's like, I don't know, maybe. he's like, but I'm not talking first.
Yeah.
And then once he does, he tells the joke, right? He's like, hey, I was in this plane. And he's like, oh, that's a funny joke. He's like, have you ever been on a plane?
Yeah.
Immediately
Yeah,
shuts him
yeah,
down.
yeah, yeah.
He's like, you ever flown? He's like,
Yeah.
well, no, but it's a joke.
And then we find Robin using that same joke later on in the bar.
It's so good.
And the other guy could call him out like, that didn't happen. It's just a joke, Harry.
that whole scene's great. Actually, one of my favorites. So the obvious interesting relationship is between Will and Sean. But there's a really cool side thing going on between Sean and Lambo,
Yeah.
the professor.
Yep.
So that to me is like, I don't know, I'd say it's more compelling because him and his relationship with Will is definitely like top notch. But his relationship with Lambo is really, really cool to me, because it seems more like the relationships you have with your friends, where they went to the same school, they were both highly acclaimed in whatever they did, and this is kind of a theme through Sean's whole life, is that he chose this woman that he loved, and he sacrificed a whole bunch of things for her, but he doesn't regret any of that. Like, he was super happy about it. And Lambo has pursued, excellence in mathematics, and has kind of just climbed to the height of mathematics. He is the top of the pyramid.
Got the Fields Medal.
We also see he's a bit of a sleaze. You see a couple moments where he's doing, weird pitches that are not Dale with girls, his students,
The
or
younger
other
girls,
people. You
yeah.
can tell he's been a little political in his aspirations.
Oh, yeah.
Forgetting where he is. So he's been playing the socialite game.
And it's funny because he's he's really not an evil character at all. And I love that they give him some redemption. Like, I love
For
that,
sure.
that he doesn't just sail off into the sunset as this sleaze bag.
Totally.
Like, you're right. You see a little bit of it. You see the times where the girls are like, Professor, this and that. And he's like, oh, are you going to have a drink with me tonight? Like, he's a little bit of a sleaze, but he's also, there are times that I think you glimpse that he actually does want something good for Will.
Yeah.
It's just that he's seeing that through the lens of
Yeah,
himself.
when he's in tears on the ground, on
Yeah.
his knees, holding these papers that Will just set afire.
Yeah.
And he's trying to,
Yeah, it's like,
save that knowledge, and he's just so he's torn up that this dude is just throwing it all away as he is.
and he's just misguided. Like, for him, he thinks, okay, if I was Will, what would I want? And he's like, okay, that's what I want for him. And so he's kind of he's being a little selfish. Like, he is pushing
Yeah.
Will there.
Yeah.
He has some other motives too, and he comes out about that. But he's really pushing Will in the direction that he thinks is best for him. But he's so disoriented to where he's like, well, what's best for you is just to climb to the top of this thing. And in reality, Sean is the only one that's actually looking out for Will. And the whole entire movie, even the friends, who it's hard to say, but even the friends are just like, they're going to be loyal to no end.
Yeah.
Like, the whole conversation that that Affleck has with him, where he's like, yeah, if you're here, that's another really famous scene. It's like, if you're still here, I'll kill you.
He's like, in 20 years, if you're still here,
No, in 20 years,
in 20 years, if you're still living here watching the Patriots game and working construction, I'll fucking kill you. That's not a threat.
That's a fact.
Will, I know you're my best friend. Don't take this the wrong way.
Don't take this the wrong way. But even in that, he's not telling him. He's like, hey, dude, like, I really want to push you here. Like, again, like Sean said, they're not the ones that are pushing him.
Yeah.
Like, that's just a support system. And so the math dude, like, he has his own kind of kind of motives behind it. But I think at his heart, that's really all he could do. Like even if he wanted everything for Will that Will could have, that's what he would still just be pushing him in mathematics because he would say, well, that's the best thing, right? Like that's the best thing for you. He kind of gets a little bit, and it's funny. So we just recently watched Whiplash. And we had a big discussion on it. Have you ever seen Whiplash, Alan?
I can't place it. That sounds familiar.
So Whiplash is it's a story about a drummer. He's he's not a prodigy, but he's going to a
And
really
he's getting pushed hard.
Yeah, super
like
hard,
mental
like-
abuse
y-
hard
yeah.
by the conductor. No, I didn't see
by
that, no.
Fletcher, who's the conductor. Anyways,
Right.
So the kind of controversy of the movie is that. Okay, he does kind of become great. He's pushed to the point where he does this really just amazing performance. But at the
Like
same
Michael Jackson style.
Yeah, but
pushed.
at the same time, you were like, hey, you also become extremely unhealthy. Like you've pushed away the one girl that liked you. And it's so parallel to this movie. Like it's so parallel to this movie in the sense that it would be the equivalent of him going with mathematician guy,
Lambeau. Yeah.
instead of Sean and him saying, oh, I just want to be the greatest ever. I want everybody to remember my name. Because all the things that Fletcher says in Whiplash, where he's like, oh, the reason I push people is all the same reasons that Lambeau said, where he's like, oh, we can't rob the world. Like he kind of builds it into this bigger thing than it is. He's like, well, Neiman is the drummer's name in Whiplash. And he's like, Neiman's just a kid who needs guidance and he needs help and he needs people that actually care about him. And he has a dad that really, really cares about him. But Fletcher just wants to find a great. He wants to find a great and push him, and Neiman's like, yeah, I'm on board with that. I want to be pushed. And so they kind of have this relationship that's really unhealthy, and he destroys him enough to where he actually becomes great. But the crux of the movie is that that's kind of a tragedy. Whereas this movie
Like
is
Tiger Woods style.
yeah. Like we look at it and we're like, oh, greatest ever. These are the things you got to do. But if you're actually those people, it's like, well, if you were somebody that loved those people, would you actually want that life for them? Like that's why I found it to be such an interesting movie. And this movie I feel like has similar beats to that, although it has him choosing a healthier path.
Well, but there's dialogue that almost directly relates to what you just said when Lambeau and Sean are at the bar talking about what they want for Will. He's such a genius. We want this. We want that. And then Sean's like, Lambeau, do you know who Ted Kaczynski is? And
Oh, yeah.
he's like, and he yells back to the boys at the bar, "It's the Unabomber," right? So like that is a path that a genius could go down.
Yeah, brilliance
It-
go
it-
a number of avenues for
Yeah.
sure, yeah.
And at one point, doesn't he just scream that he's a kid? I think at some point in their conversation, he's like, he's a kid. Like
Yeah.
I don't know. I feel like he had the same approach as the dad in Whiplash, where he's like, I just want you to be healthy. He encourages his son in his drumming, and he wants him to be good, but he wants him to enjoy it, like a dad would.
Yeah.
And he wants him to grow as a person, and he wants to have a relationship with his son. Whereas Fletcher only cared about him becoming great at this thing that he was amazing at, which is the same thing that Lambeau wants. I think Lambeau is a much healthier version, and at the end also, ends up apologizing and kind of rekindling a friendship with a lost friend that he had kind of been a dick to and kind of just been self-consumed for too long.
Yeah.
But I thought that their whole relationship was awesome because you actually get Lambeau learning something. It's not like he did that just in such a silly way.
Yeah.
Sometimes when you create these characters that are just so off the hinges bad and never have any kind of redemption, it's just it's silly
Well, I
to
think
me.
that's something this movie does so well is obviously Will's the focal point and he learns so much throughout, but everybody is growing. I won't say everybody. I'll say Lambeau is. I'll say Will is.
The friends.
And even Sean. I think
yeah.
I think a really
Oh,
like
yeah.
a sneaky beautiful part about this movie is Sean learning from Will. Because they always have that dialogue about like, oh, that's a terrific philosophy to live by. That way you'll never truly know anybody, right? Like that's what Sean says to Will, and then
Yeah.
Will mirrors it back to Sean when Sean's like, my wife's dead. Because Will's questions like, have you ever thought about getting back out there or whatever? He's like, my wife's dead.
Yeah,
And then
for
Will-
him, it was over. He had already done
and then
it.
Will
yeah.
says that's a terrific philosophy, and he just mirrors back the same line. And then at the end of the movie, Sean leaves to go on leave and explore the world. And like, I don't think he would have done that if he went through this process with Will. So I think that's really cool that Lambeau, Sean, and Will are all like growing a ton. Like the character growth in this movie is phenomenal.
Yeah, their back and forth and kind of response to all their dialogue. Like when we talk about good, like well-written characters, you're talking about characters that act how you think they should act, right? Like they're not acting out of the ordinary. It's not like, hey, you made a decision that your character really shouldn't have made just for the story to kind of progress. Whereas this really felt so authentic. It's like, hey, these characters are reacting.
Yeah.
Like those could have just been real. That's what I mean by the acting is just so phenomenally good that it never even comes across my mind that there's even a story being written. It's just characters interacting with each other and the story's writing itself, which is super difficult to do and pretty crazy that they were both 20-year-olds when they wrote this. But I actually thought one of the best acting jobs it was Skylar. I thought that girl was stupid good. Like in her whole scene, because you have the it's not your fault scene, between Affleck and sorry, not Affleck, between Matt Damon and Robin Williams. But his scene with her, Matt Damon's scene with her, where she's really pushing him and saying, "Hey, come to California with me," and he kind of gives the general, well, what if you don't like me? Like the standard thing, which I can can relate to. Being in those times of not knowing, dating somebody, not being sure, and having, we've talked about this. You're dating somebody that's long distance. Like, well, like at what point do you really like you make that decision to? And so he's expressing that. And you're like, okay, that's very relatable, but it's like real extreme. It's like he's getting kind of nasty about it, and she just keeps pushing him to the point where she's like, all right, well, like tell me you don't love me, or and she keeps anyways, and then he just blows up, right? He starts being super honest, and she's falling apart, and man, that scene just,
it's like, do you want to hear that I had cigarettes put out on my body? Like it escalates so quickly, and it's because he can't let anybody get close to him because one of the closest people in his life hurt him when he was younger.
Right.
And like that, a lot of times that is seen the most in like relationships, like loving relationships, because he just is reading the wrong things about Skylar. Like he's looking at the worst possible outcome with Skylar. He says, is there a sign on me that says save me? It's like, no, Skylar just loves him, but he views these relationships as like people are going to use him, abuse him, if not now, eventually. And like finally cracks through it.
well, I think she's great because she shows several times. Like one of my favorite scenes is her when she meets the friends, and you're like, oh, they're gonna be just way too much for her, and she just tells that like horrid joke, and they're all just like,
Oh my God.
She's in.
oh my God, that's all.
And then she wants to see where he lives.
Yeah.
And she'd probably be okay with it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then when she's like, oh, I want to meet your brothers, and then Affleck just looks over to, he's like, oh, come on, man.
Yeah.
Oh man, it's great. So tell me, like, I guess I'll ask Liam, like, what are, I guess you're gonna say no.
You're gonna say nitpicks?
Yeah, if you're to
Zero, absolutely none.
If you're to be critical, are there parts of this movie that you thought were a little corny? Are there parts where the acting just wasn't great?
No. No,
there's
hard
nothing.
No. There's not a single scene that I don't love in this movie.
What about you, Alan? Is there anything you'd be critical about in this movie?
You guys, you've already stated that you're all about the scene where they're talking about their abusive fathers. That was the scene I thought was like, can we get another take? I'm not believing what they're saying. I think they're just clearly acting. That was my.
What is the
let's
rest of
just
that
get
scene
to-
like? Because I know there's the part that I remember where he's like, I used to pick the wrench because fuck him.
Yeah. And I thought, get out of here.
Yeah. Like what
I
else?
think that's a different scene.
That's not the scene that you're talking
That's
about?
the scene I'm thinking of.
Okay.
Well, maybe it is, but I remember the scene being, it's kind of the end of their relationship, and Sean has Will's file, and Will's like, "What's in that file?"
And he's like, it's pretty effed up.
Yeah, pretty fucked up, right? And he's like, probably says this, was abandoned, like trust issues.
I'm not sure if that's the same scene or not. It might be.
That's the scene that gets into the "it's not your fault," because like Will is opening up about like it's
Right.
probably pretty messed up, right?
But they before, is that the same scene where they start talking about the abuse from their respective fathers? And
I'm not sure if
and
it's the
Robin
same
Williams
scene.
is
It might
talking
be.
about my father mean fucking drunk.
Yeah.
He says in quotes.
It
and
might
starts to
be.
talk about
It might be. I'm not sure.
and how he would intercept. He would aggro his dad to
Yeah.
get him away from his
From his mom.
his, mom and sibling. I forget who it was. And then it pivoted to,
Yeah, I guess because
and that's it. It's not, man. I did like the movie, really did. Probably wouldn't make my top 50,
really.
but that's more of a personal
Sure,
thing. That's not a like people.
Yeah.
This is in your top 3. You said in Dumb and Dumber's number 2.
Well, it might be. I watched Dumb and Dumber recently.
Dude, somebody over here is like, oh, he's got such great taste.
Different
and then they
strokes
just
for
heard,
different folks.
They
Well,
just heard
that's all
that.
it was. And I
Yeah.
wasn't especially
Oh,
hurt
of
when
course,
you
man.
shut
It's
down
so
Spaghetti
subjective.
Sunset, which was one of my. Again, that one, to be honest, though, might not be in my top 100 either. I just.
Yeah. It just
I
it
just
hits
picked
you
it 'cause
emotionally.
I guess I wanted to do something old fashioned at the time and lighter. I'm
Yeah.
so sick. I'm fatigued by everything modern right
Yeah.
now. So I thought let's keep it easy.
It's the beauty of movies, man. It's subjective.
But that was kind of the only thing for what it is. I thought scene for scene it was excellent. Yeah.
Yeah.
For what it was.
Yeah, I feel like if I was really being critical, so there's a scene where he's in the courtroom and he's like defending himself, and he's just like, it just doesn't strike me that so obviously he's somebody that retains information like nobody else on the planet, so he can just read a book and instantly know it. So he's
not just a mathematical genius.
Yeah.
He's a because later on he's doing her chemistry or
Yeah,
biology
Yeah,
homework
yeah.
or something.
He's just
like,
a genius in
he's-
everything.
yeah,
like
right.
he can read through a book in like seconds, and then he's just retained
and remember the
everything from it.
page
Yeah.
number. Yeah, he's a real. He's
And-
touched.
and so
he's
he-
full Rain Man.
So
Yeah.
in
but
the,
with the personality.
in the scene where he beats up some guy that beat him up in kindergarten or something, that was the whole thing. He's sitting in the courtroom and he's chosen to defend himself, and he's just throwing out all these different little statutes and then the judge is kind of like, well, it seems like you've never seen an ounce of jail, that you always get tried, and then you always get yourself out of it. I actually thought that was a little corny, because I was just like, oh, what are the like I feel like if he was ever doing what he's doing now, people would just roll their eyes and be like, all right, screw you, dude. Like, no, you're going to jail.
Oh, that he wouldn't have got away with it. There's
Yeah.
4 other times.
Yeah,
that they would have been shut down earlier. Yeah.
Exactly. That
Maybe.
I even
Maybe.
thought that being there in the scene, I was like, oh, I forgot about this, and it seems like a lot. Like, he's just like, by the Constitution of the United States of America. I
he's
was like,
quoting
all
like
right.
the Federalist Papers.
Yeah,
or
I was
something.
like, all right, that's like a little corny.
Really reaching. Yeah.
But that's me being extremely
I'm
critical.
fine with that. That scene is nowhere near one of my favorites.
Yeah, and it's not. It's like, this is me thinking before we got on here. I was like, if I really had to be critical of this movie, because I think it's phenomenal. I mean, it pumps on about every cylinder it can, and yeah, if I was being critical, I thought that was a little unnecessary.
The joke that we mentioned earlier, that Robin Williams later shares at the bar,
Yeah.
that landed so flat on me, it didn't even garner a smile.
Really,
And
I thought that
I
was-
want to know what the other jokes were that they scrapped that did not make it in. Like, what were the alternatives? Because that one, I don't.
I thought that, again, going back to the authenticity of the characters, it seemed like a joke that Will would say and laugh at. Like, hey,
Yeah.
don't forget the coffee.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
And then it was funny to me that moments, a
I
few
suppose.
scenes later,
Sure,
you
yeah,
have
yeah.
you have you
For a
have
Southie, right.
Robin Williams telling the same joke as if it's his.
Yeah.
But yeah.
I want to touch on. Are we done with the nitpicks?
Yeah, that's
I
fine.
can't hear it anymore.
There wasn't much. and what I said was,
Yeah, no, it's small potatoes.
Yeah.
I want to. So one of my favorite parts about this movie is the ending, and there's 2.
like the credits.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
As he drives away, that's pretty good. Pretty powerful.
No, they were. Yeah.
Yeah. The two like I don't want to call them callbacks, but the 2 callbacks that it does at the ending hit so well, because it's the one is him and Ben Affleck having their conversation on the hood of the car,
That scene.
where he's like, the best part of my day is the 15 seconds I'm walking up to your house, and I'm thinking maybe he won't be there.
Yeah.
It's so good, and it's like, it doesn't really hit at the time, but then when that is the ending of him of Will chasing Skylar,
And you know it. You're
and
like,
he walks
oh,
up,
it's gonna.
and dude, I'll tell you what, I'm getting chills thinking about it. Is the smile that he has
Yeah.
as he realizes he's like, he's not here, and then he goes back to the car, and then Casey Affleck like is stoked because he
runs
gets to
to the-
sit shotgun.
That was his personal growth development arc.
Yeah.
Moving from the back to the front seat. Yeah.
big. It's big.
Everyone's got an arc.
It's
Yeah.
big.
He went from jacking off into baseball gloves to sitting in the shotgun. That was
Morgan.
his character
My
development.
baseball mitt from Little
Morgan.
League.
That's my baseball mitt from Little League.
But no, that's so good, and I think it just speaks to the loyalty that friend group has. Where, yeah, of course, he's the best part of Ben Affleck's character's day is when he gets to have some beers after work with all of his friends, and of course, that's a huge loss for them.
I missed it. They weren't brothers. They were
No.
okay. Because
No,
he was
yeah,
the
they're just
orphan. They weren't
buddies.
all orphans at like the same like foster home. Or
I don't think
something.
so. No, they're all just buddies.
Just buddies from
Yeah.
high school.
But like,
I got it.
obviously, he's going to be sad that Will's not around, but he knows that's for the best. He knows
Right.
that Will has a talent, A talent, and B, a girl that he screwed up with that he needs to chase. And so, like, that's just putting your friend above your own self-interest. And then the other callback is it starts with one of the conversations in the therapy room where Sean is telling Will how he met his wife, which holds a special place in my heart because there's a big Red Sox game that really happened that's referenced. One of the biggest games, at the time, it would have been the biggest game in Red Sox history, probably. It was a walk-off home run. And he's taking Will through this, like, Carlton Fisk hits the home run. He's waving it fair. And Will's like, that's awesome. He's like, did you rush the field? He's like, no, I wasn't there. I was at the bar. I was getting a drink with my future wife. And then another great line there is when Will's like the moment sinks in. He's like, that's cool. And Will's like, would have been a cool game to go to, though, huh? And then Sean's like, I didn't know he was going to hit home run. But then the callback is during that meeting of his wife for Sean, he tells his boys, I got to go see about a girl. And Will's like, how did they let you miss that game? And he's like, well, my friend saw that I was serious. And then at the end, when Will finally decides to chase Skylar, he leaves a note in Sean's mailbox. I got to go see about a girl. And he's like, son of a bitch stole my line. That's how it ends, man. It's so
I asked
good.
a student about that in the class I'm teaching right now because turned out that was in his top 3, this movie.
Yeah?
I was like, wow, what are the odds? I got some homework. I'm overdue. Lay it on me. But let's hash this out. And he mentioned that line was ad-lib.
It's improvised.
I believe it
yeah.
was.
Yeah,
Yes, I believe it was.
Totally
Stole my line.
improvised.
Yeah.
So good.
Son of a bitch stole my
The other scene that's
line.
improvised is him talking about his wife farting
Really?
That
herself
full
out
improv.
of her.
Is that
fart.
right?
Yeah, full improv. And that's like Matt Damon's real reaction.
I actually read
laughing.
about that in IMDb.
Yeah.
They talk about how the camera shakes.
Yeah, yeah.
Because it had the
Yeah,
cameraman going.
exactly. So good. Other improv note: Casey Affleck plays Morgan. Pretty much all of his dialogue is. Isn't that great? That's just him. That's just who Casey Affleck is. So good.
Well, it's funny because Casey Affleck is gone from that to being an extremely serious
Oscar
He
role.
looks
winner.
like a murderer.
Yeah.
You know? Like,
Yeah,
this guy is seen something.
He's Oscar winner now.
Yeah,
You know,
Best Actor.
Like what was it? Manchester by the Sea.
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
Super sad stuff now. And
Yeah.
He started off as just being such a clown.
Yeah, so good.
They're talking about the burgers in the one scene where
Oh,
he's like,
yeah,
let's set up a system where you can make payments and I'll give you your double burger. He's like, give me the burger now.
He had a double burger.
So like if a friend actually said that to you, was like, hey, look, like just leave, don't even say goodbye, just gone. Would that actually be cool? Because I think it works great in the movie. Practically though, nah, right?
I think in the context, because this isn't the first time he's heard this bit about, because he already had this line with Sean trying to tell him, like, you got to grow into this thing, take a risk. The object wasn't that, there's nothing noble about bricklaying or whatever. My father was a bricklayer, says Sean, right? And then that's cool. The problem with this, that what do you say, is not noble or something like
Honorable.
that. Honorable,
Yeah.
maybe, is that you're gating yourself out of fear, not because of
Yeah.
honor or nobility or
Right,
whatever, of just honest labor. It's not that. It's you're holding yourself back out of fear. And then that comes up again, I think, almost the same way with Affleck.
Yeah.
And the problem is, we'd all love to be able to do, we're stuck here. This is what we got,
Yeah.
and we've made peace with that. You've got something great, a gift. Don't forget doing it for yourself. Do it for us.
Sitting on a winning lottery ticket.
something. Exactly. Yeah,
Yeah.
he says that. You're sitting on a winning lottery. Yeah.
And I think that is helpful for him to hear. Like, I think it takes himself out of his own problems when he sees that his best friend is like, do it for me.
Yeah.
It's like, no, don't do it for you. Do it for me.
Yeah.
And I think that hits with him specifically. And obviously, I think Chucky's Ben Affleck's character's name. Chucky would know that would hit a note for Will. Because Will is he's just a self-sabotager because of his past. So
He's good at
And
it.
he even
Yeah.
starts
Because of
off
his intelligence, he's just got that much more
It's like he's gonna-
utility or whatever, more faculty to just conjure up these lies about what could be.
yeah.
and it takes him off his element because instantly he's like, oh, don't give me this I owe it to myself bullshit. And he's like, no, screw that.
Yep.
He's like, you owe it to me.
Yep.
And you're like, wait, what?
Yeah.
All of us,
You're just
yeah.
like was not expecting that. Will wasn't expecting it either. But yeah, that's a great scene.
Let me ask you guys a question about the ending.
Okay.
It's a hypothetical. Does Skylar take him back?
Obviously, I think. Well. So this is another funny thing is that like she's like over the moon about him, and I mean he's brilliant, and I think that's definitely a turn on. She's like, man, this guy's wicked smart. It's hot.
Smart.
And like the scenes that he's more wicked smart, she is definitely like when he just explains to her, he's like, oh hey yeah, like for me, it's like I can just play like Beethoven. They could just play. They couldn't tell you why. They could just play it. He's like, I can just play.
Yeah.
And she's like grabs him and kisses him.
And he's kind of humble about it.
Yeah.
He didn't sire it over or anything.
And also, I mean, I think in retro, like that's the first time he's kind of talking about himself to her, and I think that's why she's like, But
I don't remember that scene.
This is the second time Greg's moaned on this podcast, by the way. For those
That's not
keeping
how I
track.
remember it.
what was the first time I moaned?
No, you said you're moaning about the Oscar bait discussion earlier. We're like, all right, Greg, settle down there.
I need to clip one of those.
Yeah, you need a clip. Yeah. And now you got two to choose from.
I'll do a really, really good one later.
But the reason I ask is because I think it's intentional to not end on them reconnecting.
Mm-hmm.
It's intentional to end on him driving out there.
Yeah.
Because I don't think the end result matters.
Yeah.
I think what matters is that he took the risk.
He finally pulled the trigger. He
Yeah.
finally took a risk.
Like
Yeah.
that's what
Yeah.
matters.
And you definitely like you want him to choose that as far as like from the audience perspective. You definitely want him to choose the girl. I mean,
Yeah.
like she's like phenomenal. The whole
great.
movie, you're just like, this is the greatest girl ever. Like you're watching like this girl's awesome. Just from the first, but she's like, you're an idiot. She's like, I'm
Yeah.
sitting over there, and she's obviously got like a great British accent
Yeah,
too,
yeah.
which is really cute. And she's just like, I've been sitting over there, and you could have talked to me this whole time, and now you can't because I've got to leave. And you're like, oh my gosh.
And he's still not taking
Yeah.
it.
And
It's
he's like,
how far she got to go to like before you take this?
But I think that was really well done because he doesn't present like somebody who's going to chase a random girl. Like you would assume that somebody who's that brilliant could find his way, like he could talk his way into hanging out with girls if he wanted to. But later when he's just like when he's admitting that he doesn't want to get close to anybody, and you're finding this out. It's not like contradictory. It's not like all of a sudden he's like pursuing Skylar right off the bat. He's really apprehensive with her. And I think that that's accurate to his character because you find out, later that he's pushing everybody away and that he's slowly kind of letting his walls down with
The
her.
subject of his sex life comes
Yeah.
up mildly with
Yeah.
Sean.
Yeah.
He's already put it together like, oh, you have had sex.
I bet you
Like,
we've even been late a couple times.
Yeah, right. Yeah. And,
It's like, I have been late a couple times.
right. And you can tell from his response that he's not out there playing the scene.
No.
He's not using that brain of his to
Right.
get out there and explore like that.
And I think that's like I think it's authentic. Like it makes for a very authentic relationship between him and her, where you're like, oh, this is actually how a kid who is brilliant but is really, really shut off would kind of act. He'd be like, well, obviously I should say yes to this girl who's coming up and showing interest, who's really beautiful. But he's almost like tiptoeing towards it, and it takes her being just super assertive for anything to happen. And you're like, oh, looking back at it, that is how it should. If his character is accurate to like what we're discovering, it should have to play out that way.
Yeah.
So I think everything about their relationship was like great to watch for me, at least. I loved all the scenes between the two of them. She was obviously great. He's super witty and smart, wicked smart. But also, as it gets closer to bigger decisions and her saying that I love you and all that stuff, it gets more intense. But yeah, to answer your question, for sure, because this girl he breaks things off in like a super just over the top way, cussing each other out, smashing the wall, and leaves. And then calls her after what presumably a week or so, and she's just like, "I love you." And I'm like, "All right, this
right.
girl is on the hook." I mean, she's not like for sure she's taking him back if he just shows up to California. It's also it really hits you the times that we live in now. Where if somebody went to California, you'd be like, "All right, whatever, I could FaceTime you tomorrow, and we could settle this all." That it's like. There's nothing. Maybe he doesn't even have her number. She's gonna have a new landline phone number somewhere, and maybe he gets it, maybe he doesn't. Like who knows? He's using a.
How do you even chase someone down like that?
Yeah, like how do you he's like I don't even know how to find. He's just gonna go to California to wherever and try to find her.
Wasn't she changing schools or
Yeah,
something? It would have been something like
well,
that.
she's transferring to
just
Stanford,
another
right?
dormitory for him to sneak into or whatever. He knows the game.
It is wild though to think of relationships. I'm gonna say back then, but it's just
12:30 at the Big Oak.
Yeah.
Don't be late.
Yeah, exactly.
High noon.
Like what he calls her, and she's like, "Oh, I was wondering if you'd call," and you're sitting there like, by this time you would have added somebody on Facebook, Instagram,
Yeah.
been looking through all of their tagged
Long
pictures to find out what they look like when they're not putting filters on. Like you'd find everything about this person, and now it's just such a
I miss the simplicity of that. Though.
Yeah,
It
I
seems really
know,
cool,
right?
doesn't it?
It just
like
now-
romantic.
Now it's like everybody's got analysis paralysis. You're just like, well, my 500 options. I don't really know what I'm gonna do.
Yep. We'd be remiss to go this entire podcast without talking about the most societally influential line from the movie.
Societally
I
influential.
don't know what the exact.
I feel
Bit
like
about
this-
apples. That
Do
might
you
be
like
the secret.
apples?
So he that phrase existed before this movie. Yes.
I don't know. Did it?
So Nathaniel looked it up when we were watching.
I had you guys look it up.
Yeah,
like,
yeah, and it was it was apparently that's a phrase because a lot of was it pipe bombs or was it
Maybe
was it
grenades
yeah,
or
old
something like
old
that.
school grenades resembled apples.
Seems like a stretch.
Yeah, like even as he was reading, he's like, I don't know if this is true, and so people used to throw them and be like, how you like them apples?
I could just about see it.
I guess.
There's
yeah,
no
but-
way that was like commonly used
yeah.
in 1997, though.
That's like people used to say that the middle
He
finger,
read about it.
the middle finger was started because archers used to have their middle fingers cut off
What?
when they were captured, so that they couldn't like pull their bows anymore. And to show them that they were still able to shoot, they'd hold up their middle fingers and it was kind of like an fu to everybody else. And I'm like, maybe that is.
It's somewhat believable.
I don't know if we have any. We're like I don't know. Maybe it's true. Maybe it's not. But yeah, that scene could not be there, and I wouldn't care.
Yeah, but it's so. That's the scene that sticks with a lot of people that are just like
but it's so
tertiarily
silly.
aware
Like
of
it's
it.
not even that. Like when I watch it, I'm not like,
Yeah.
like I don't care. Like, it's like, do you like apples? And he's like, sure. Like I'm actually more so with floppy
his
blonde
side,
hair
yeah,
guy.
yeah,
I'm like, this is a dumb thing to say. He's like, I got a number. How you like them apples? And I'm like, nah.
Yeah, it could
Nah,
not exist
it's
in the
just
movie,
dumb.
and nothing would change about it.
Yeah.
But I love it.
Of course
love
you
it.
do.
I love it so
Of
much.
course you do.
There's no way that warrants that sound. I know the viewers agree with me.
It's just a really strange line in a really profound movie. It just seems
That's how I feel about that joke.
It's-
Like, what were the
Is it
runner-up
profound? Is it
jokes?
profound? There's some body humor with the boys.
Oh, there's a lot. Okay, yeah. So we could talk about that a little bit. I mean, so the humor with his friends is like rancid humor. It's like the uttermost of guy humor. It's the verging on uncomfortability when you're watching, right? Talking about, going up and watching porn in his mom's room. He's like, oh, what are you doing?
Yeah.
Watching. That's my little league glove.
He comes down out of breath.
Yeah, like
just visibly,
it's very
worked up out of his session upstairs.
It's your only VCR.
it's the only VCR. So I mean, I guess that is necessary to kind of show
the
what.
little league glove.
Hogan.
Like I hadn't seen this movie in like 20 years, 15 minimum, and that's one of the few scenes that stuck out to me for its because it was that grotesque
Yeah.
when I first saw it. Like,
Yeah.
whoa!
I didn't
That's
remember it
next
at all when I was watching it. I was like, this is a lot.
But I mean, Matt Damon and Ben Affleck and Casey Affleck all did grow up together in Boston. I guarantee you that's exactly how they talked.
Did they really grow up together, the three
Yeah.
of them? I actually
Yeah.
didn't know that. So this is all backstory that's really interesting
Yeah.
to me. So because
No, they've been friends for a long, long, long time. Ben
That's-
Affleck and Matt Damon, and obviously Casey's Ben's brother. So
yeah, no, that's that I think that adds another element to the movie for
Yeah.
sure for me. So taking a step back, I guess, out of this movie specifically, and just talking about like prodigy movies, do you guys like that kind of? Maybe it doesn't hold its own genre, but like movies like this where there's a prodigy and somebody discovers them, and they're I don't know if you guys watch Suits. Have you guys watched Suits, the show? So it's similar kind of idea. So there's a guy there's a kid who's essentially Goodwill. He's Will from Goodwill Hunting. Like, so this kid is just retains information like nobody else on the planet. And the opening of the show is him running from the cops or from a drug deal or something, because he makes his living doing the bar exam for people, like faking it for people, like going and doing it, and they pay him, and he goes and he does it, and he gets a perfect score on it every time. And then he just like sells drugs on the side. He's kind of a bum. And so he's running from the cops. And he ends up running into this job interview for this like just super prestigious law firm. And there's like the #1 lawyer guy there. He's just this badass, super sharp, like always like super on his toes about everything. And he sits down with him acting like he's the next person in the interview just to get away from the cops. And he ends up getting the job from the guy. And so it's about the two of them, this one just best lawyer in the area, kind of a shark, and then this kid who's a prodigy just becoming just badass lawyers together. Anyways, so movies like that kind of hold the child prodigy or whatever, like, do those movies work for you guys all the time? Are there other ones other than this that you guys can think of?
Yeah. Finding Forrester.
I mentioned Finding Forrester, yeah.
Searching for Bobby Fischer is a really good one about a prodigy chess
The
player.
chess player.
Dead Poet Society feels similar. There's not like one specific like student of his in that movie. I guess there maybe is. Ethan
He almost
Hawke's.
feels like the same character in Dead Poets Society.
I know. I obviously love that movie too. But yeah, I think it absolutely works for me. I think the coming of age story. if you
Yeah,
wanna
I guess
call it
that's what it would be called. He just
typically
happens to
work
be a
for me.
genius.
Did you guys ever see Powder?
No, I've heard of it
No.
though. It's the movie where the guy's really pale, right? Yeah.
Is it really?
Yes.
He can channel electricity.
Yeah.
But this is a real movie? When would it come out?
I might not recommend this because this will be another long when if I ever get the chance.
Yeah, you're coming back.
You'll never
for-
have me come back.
coming back to
Like
watch
after
Powder.
that, you'll see I'm 2 for 2 with this
Rustler's
weird,
Rhapsody and
obscure,
Powder.
bizarre stuff. But that's kind of a prodigy thing.
Yes, coming of
Definitely.
age hits for me.
Did you guys watch the show Queen's Gambit?
I'm watching that right now with my wife.
Really?
No way.
Yep.
You like
We
it?
watched it last night,
Yeah. I think it's
and I was
solid.
disappointed to find out. Spoiler alert! That it's not based on a real chick. I
Oh,
thought
yeah.
for sure that was a real person. In
No,
life. No.
not at all. But I think it's always interesting to the idea that somebody is a genius or amazing at something, and then they get into an environment where they can actually use that.
Channeling
Provided
it.
they've
right.
got character flaws.
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
she's got
Yeah.
flaws.
Right, exactly. And you like that they're still, again, it's like, oh, well, they're perfect at this thing, but they've got so many other problems in their lives. But a lot of the satisfying scenes are when they're in their element, right? Is when he's sitting there and he's like, you know how easy this is for me? He's like
joke.
and this is a joke, and he's just like, I wish you just didn't have to do it and give it to you and just watch you fuck it up all the time.
Stumble around with it. Which is so disrespectful to a mathematician that won the Fields Medal.
It's just demoralizing. He's sitting there just crying
Yeah.
over a burnt piece of paper because this kid put his hands on it. It's just it, and he's just sitting there and he's just like, you're embarrassing me.
the lesson. There's always someone better than you. Whatever your field is.
He has a really profound line there where he's just like, most days I wish I never met you because I wouldn't have to know that you exist.
For me, that was his moment in that
Yeah.
movie.
Yeah.
That was it.
that
He's down
was-
there on his knees holding that smoldering bit of paper.
And it reveals the fact that he there's probably an element of him that wants what's best for Will, and he just thinks what's best for Will is to be pushed to this. But then he kind of reveals underneath all that part where he's like, honestly, I just wish I didn't meet you because you've taken me down off of my high horse
Yeah.
here, and I have to accept the fact that yes, I'm this Fields Medal, winner. I've walked around kind of smug this whole movie, and now look at me. I'm on my knees in front of you, just holding a piece of paper that you could care less about.
I didn't see it that way,
And-
but now I could see that that's probably what he meant.
Yeah.
I was thinking when he said, because now I know that guys like you are out there, that you exist, that probably is what he meant. Now I was thinking savants or just geniuses out there that are just squandering their gift is what I first thought. But yeah,
Well,
you're probably...
he does say after that he's like, I wish I wouldn't have to know that you exist, and then Will walks away, and then he goes, and know that you're throwing it all away. And so you get that there is the element of him again wanting what his version of what's best for Will is, whether that's right or wrong. He's actually doing it. That part of him is doing it a little bit out of motivation for Will, but that it's kind of underlining that he's also just kind of sad that he's been
Outplayed,
he's been
yeah.
completely dethroned in a humiliating way. Like
Yeah, I
he's not even
suppose,
close
yeah,
to
yeah,
this
yeah.
guy. Like it's not even like, well, you're number one and I'm number two. It's like, no, you are existing on a plane that I'm not even close to. And he just, and I think parents probably have this a little bit with kids where you want to feed a little bit off of that. Like you want to live vicariously through somebody who's that amazing. And he's just like, no, I don't care. I don't want to do this stuff. Which that's why I think he's such a dynamic character, and that's why I really love him at the end going back to Robin Williams and just being like, listen, Sean, and he's like, yeah, me too.
Yeah.
And it's like,
Yeah.
that's just great. And then they're like, he's like, can we go for a drink? And he's like, yeah, sure.
Yeah.
And they're just walking out, just kind of like shooting the breeze. I'm
Yeah.
like, I love that. I love that for them because they just like, yeah, his relationship with Sean, with Will is great, but it's a mentor and a student relationship.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's not a, like, he doesn't necessarily have Will to encourage him and to be there. And to,
Mm-hmm.
and so now you get to see him actually, like, and he, you know, his wife has passed away. So it almost just makes you feel comforted a little bit that he's like, okay, he's got his buddy who's actually now kind of rekindled this
Yeah.
relationship a little bit.
There's a good like behind the scenes note where obviously Matt Damon and Ben Affleck were super young, and so the fact that they got Robin Williams and Stellan Skarsgård on board with this, there's a scene. I forget exactly what scene between those two it was, but there's like not evidence. So there's like eyewitness of like Ben Affleck and Matt Damon like giddy as like these two phenomenal actors are acting out their written story and like crushing it. They said that they were like giddy.
That would have been something.
Yeah,
for
wouldn't that be
sure.
so cool? They're like
20s,
27
that.
years
Yeah,
old.
yeah, yeah.
Well, Matt, you can imagine that now. Imagine writing something now and getting to see two actors just put their all into it.
Yeah.
Like, and even add elements that you may not have even seen in there. Maybe you're like, okay, well, this is an interesting conversation I want to write between two characters that acted that have this as their background. You hand it to them and say, go. Like, that's just like a kid in a candy. Like, that's got to be, like, that's got to be so cool.
It's got to hit for you too because
Yeah.
of your field. You know?
I mean, that's like at the core of what I do. Is I have to learn how to get everyday people who are not, you know, used to be on camera to look, you know, decent on camera and to look comfortable and all that stuff. So that's a lot of my skills are developing that side of things. But to be with somebody that actually knows that already, and then it would just give you the freedom. Like, yeah, exactly. I hear it and I'm just like, imagine the things I could write, and the things that I could do. I wouldn't have to explain it to you, and in fact, you would probably be able to explain it to me. Like you'd be able to read deeper into what I'm writing, and so that is just such a. It's so funny. I mean, it adds a lot to it just hearing it from you that the two of them wrote it.
Yeah.
I didn't know that at all.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You guys want some half-assed research?
Oh, did you really do some?
Of course I did. What do you mean?
Half-ass research.
Okay, I got some good ones here.
All right, here we go.
So the first draft of Good Will Hunting was a spy thriller. Rob Reiner. Do you guys know who Rob Reiner is?
That's a familiar name. Who is
Familiar name. You probably recognize his face. I'm trying to think what he's in.
Rob Reiner.
Maybe in the Ocean's movies, maybe? I'll show you his face. Rob Reiner, they took the script to him, and he was like, you recognize him?
that? No, I don't.
I don't know what he's in. He's in a lot, and he's a huge name. But they took the script to Rob Reiner, and Rob Reiner was like, drop all the spy stuff. He's like, focus on the relationship with the therapist. And they did.
Spy stuff.
Yeah.
They shelved it, and then Jason Bourne.
It was
happened
more
a few,
like
10 years later.
Yeah, probably true. Like when I say spy, it was more like he was an operative for the CIA with his genius. Like he was still a genius, but like he was being utilized by the CIA, and that's
They do have an element of that in this movie, where the NSA
Yeah.
or whoever's trying to like source
Yeah.
them for the yeah.
So that was maybe in the first draft.
For intelligence purposes.
Affleck and Damon wrote. So they're young and unproven, so they have to shop this script across all the major studios, and like it's not like it would be nowadays where it's like Damon and Affleck on board.
We're in.
How much money do you want? They wrote a sex scene 60 pages into the script when bringing it to major studios to see who actually read it. There was only one studio that was like, yeah, it's actually really great, but drop the sex scene. But every other studio was like, didn't have any notes on that. And that was the studio that ended up picking up the movie, Miramax.
That's actually kind of brilliant.
Yeah, isn't that funny?
That's awesome.
They're like, what's the deal with that sex scene randomly?
Like, oh, good, you read it.
Yeah. And then The Bench, I spoke on it before, but when Robin Williams died, it was a memorial site, impromptu memorial site.
Really?
Yep.
That's
like
really interesting.
there was like a bunch of lines from his other movies, but mostly like highlighted by his lines from Good Will Hunting, like Your Move, Chief, all around the bench in Boston. Pretty
Is
cool.
it still memorialized like that?
No, it is unmarked.
Really?
Completely unmarked. I was thinking there was going to be, and I'll show you guys a photo of it. I was thinking there was going to be like at least like a plaque
Yeah.
or something, or maybe like roped off. Nope, just a bench. Just a bench, no plaque, nothing. You have to like research it to get. You're like, oh, is it that bench? Me and Ray walked around the entire park.
What
We're
an
like,
odd
yeah,
choice.
that's-
I thought for sure that it was because I read
Yeah.
that it had been memorialized,
No.
but discontinued. just
Currently, it is just a bench that people can just sit on with no indication that it's anything
like,
special.
maybe people were burning like effigies at the side or like doing some kind of ritualistic
Yeah.
thing. They
There's
had
some
to,
Santeria going on though there.
The other fun fact I have is not about the movie, but about my time in Boston this past weekend.
Oh, here we go.
I went to Fenway Park
Ah.
Saturday night. You know who threw out the first pitch?
The guy that hit the home run.
Matt Damon and Casey Affleck.
No way.
How
That was supposed to be the air horn.
How
Sorry.
wild is that? Yeah, come on. Kind of shit all over my thing.
Boring.
Lame. Yeah, isn't that crazy though?
That's wild.
Like throwing out the first
Did you know
pitch.
that?
No, I didn't know that going into it. And they're like Matt Damon and Casey Affleck. I guess they have a new show or something. But
So
it's funny.
I did a video when I lived in Miami for a diabetes walk a while back, and it was at Marlins Stadium, and so they wanted to like so the Marlins. So I'm just gonna talk this down really quick before I sound really like so. Boston is like amazing baseball, whatever. Miami Marlins are like a joke. Like if you buy a pizza in Miami, they're like, "Oh, do you want 5 tickets to the Marlins game?" And you're like, "No, you can take them." Like seriously, like, nobody goes to the game. It's awful. So they honored me at a Marlins game. I
go.
like walked out on the field and stuff and got this plaque. Anyways, so there was these 7 people that were there. Were
I
like,
was going to say standing
we're
ovation. to seven
we're
people,
going
yeah.
nuts. But I went into this room, that had the other, quote unquote important people, whatever. And it was like the person singing the national anthem and a couple other people, and the person throwing at the first pitch, which was some gymnast from Miami. I don't know. The next day, Teddy Bridgewater was throwing out the first pitch. This was the starting quarterback at the time for the Minnesota Vikings, who I am just like a hardcore fan of. He's born and raised in Miami. And so they had him throwing it the next day. So he would have just been sitting in that room with me, and I'd have been like chilling for 30 minutes with Teddy Bridgewater in a room. Like, dude, it was just heartbreaking for me to be like I didn't think about it at all. I'm like, oh, these are really unimportant people. Like where are you? Yeah, I'm spending my time with the guy who's singing the national anthem at the Miami Marlins game today. And I'm like, oh, I didn't know they had a game. It's like, well, clearly nobody else in Miami knew either. And if it was the next day, it would have freaking been dang. So yeah, that's cool though. It's crazy that I wonder if he does a lot of them. I wonder if Matt Damon does a lot.
I mean, I'm sure they go to a lot of games, but they're like promoting a TV show that's coming out on Apple TV specifically. That's why they were there, but it's just funny.
That's
And
wild.
Dunkin' Donuts, where does that fit in?
Dunks?
Yeah, I was gonna say there was so much Dunkin'
They
Donuts.
call it Dunks in Boston. Dunks? You going to Dunks?
What's your affiliation with this town?
Just love the Red Sox.
Oh, okay. Dunkin'.
I'm so glad you asked that to be like,
'Cause you're from Charlotte?
Oh, so you're from Boston, right?
I'm from
No.
I'm from Jersey, which is like kind of close to Boston. So it's kind of the same thing.
Yeah.
You know they love Dunkin' Donuts there. It's got to be the most Dunkin' Donuts per capita city in the country, I would imagine.
And where did you get the shirt? Was that a special order, or did
Online,
you
yeah.
find that? Yeah.
Online. My favorite shirt.
I did love the scene where he walks up to the 2 janitors. He's like, listen, and who sweeps the whatever dormitories, and he's like, who's asking? He's like, listen, I'm Professor so and so, and he's like, and
Well,
this is Professor.
Yeah.
And they just laugh at him. It's
That's
just
a
so great.
great one.
Like I just didn't see it coming, I guess, because he's like, listen, I don't know if you know who I am.
Yeah.
I'm Professor, whatever. And he's like, oh, nice to meet you. This is Professor so, just like shuts him down in a second. Like, yeah, we don't care, dude. Like,
Those guys probably aren't actors.
yeah, it really did seem like that's what I thought of when I was like, literally everybody knocked it out of the park. I'm like, those guys could have not even been actors. Like, they were so great. Like, it just seemed like, I'm like, if I went to Boston and went into some janitorial segment of a college and we talked to the administration in there, that's probably what they'd be like. Oh man, phenomenal movie, amazing movie. Bing Bong 69 got kind of mad at us in the comments, and he said, "Was Liam in Boston? Who's real? Sounds fake. What happens to Nathaniel? Did you guys kill him?" And then he said, "Guess we're not reading the comments tonight."
Who is this? Do you know who this is?
Bing Bong 69. I have no idea who
Really?
that is. I have zero. I'm pretty sure it's one of your friends.
It's got to be.
And then I replied that I'm like, we're here. And Nathaniel's in Pittsburgh. But I just didn't know how to respond to any of those comments.
I think it's Gavin.
Probably.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
Great movie pick. So this was Liam's pick. So Nathaniel picked a movie called Ink, which you didn't end up watching, did you, Alan?
No, I didn't.
Alan
No.
almost came over and watched Ink, and then he got
Yeah,
sick.
that's right. Yeah.
He got sick, and then wasn't able to watch. You should go back and watch it. It's worth it, man. It's a good movie. it's a film though. That was one of the greatest comments. Is I'm texting with Alan. I'm like, oh, you're gonna watch a movie tonight. You know, if you want to come over, he's like, oh, it sounds good. I'm like, yeah, we're gonna watch this movie called Ink. And he goes,
night.
So film night.
I think
not
I
movie
referenced your line in the podcast. It's like Alan said it best.
It's a phenomenal. It was a really great film. We can call it that much. But
Yeah, that happens.
yeah, so I will be picking for our show in 2 weeks, and I will be choosing.
You got it.
It's gonna come from left field.
Do a good one.
Trap.
Is that with Ryan Reynolds?
No, it's coming out tomorrow.
Nice.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Yeah. Nice.
Throw
nice,
a little
nice.
curveball. I haven't
Nice.
even seen this movie, so who knows? Maybe it's
I like it.
so. This is a new M. Night Shyamalan movie, which means it's either going to be.
I know the one. Yeah, right. Yeah.
Looks solid.
That
right?
does look interesting.
Yeah, so like for me, my take on Shyamalan is like his first 4 movies. I don't know if they're technically his first. He wrote the script for Stuart Little, and then he made movies.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, really weird. But his first big 4 are like they exist in like my top 10, all 4 of them. Like it's like Unbreakable, The Sixth Sense, Signs, and The Village. And then Lady in the Water is like everybody realized he was crazy, and then they all got really bad after that. So every time he makes a new one, I'm like, it's probably going to be bad, but hey, it could be phenomenal. He has the capability.
He does.
So I always get excited. He's one of the few directors that I make it a point to see.
Gonna be some massive twist
gonna-
where he's the good guy and the whole stadium are villains.
He's just gonna pop out as a. See, that was his problem. So in Lady in the Water, which if you haven't seen it, it's a really bizarre like.
I don't
old
think I've watched the whole
folks'
thing.
tale.
I think I
like-
just couldn't hang. And I
Again-
happen to like some of his other ones that people kind of talk down, like The Village. I
Oh,
actually
yeah.
like that one.
Yeah, I think The Village is great, and it's funny. The acting in Lady in the Water, it's BDH, Bryce Dallas Howard, and what's his name? Paul Giamatti.
Oh,
Really great
great.
acting.
Yeah.
Like the acting is great. Gets really, really weird, and then he's introduced as a world-changing author in the movie.
He himself.
himself, and then everybody's just kind of like, dude, you can't do that. What if I wrote a story and I'm like, all right, guys, I want you to act this. I'm like, what character are you playing? I'm like, super hot guy. He comes in. He has all the other girls he has to push the girls off, and then he finally gives in. Then he has to save the world by allowing them to touch him. So it was
He's
just
like the greatest videographer ever. I don't know.
It was just like it's like he's this really humble writer, and then the girl whose name is Story is like telling everybody's future kind of, and she looks at him and she's like, you will be a world-changing author and you will be killed for your beliefs or something.
yeah.
And he's like, I still have to do it to change the world. And you're like, oh, come on.
And he looks at the camera and he winks.
Yeah. So he shot himself in the foot, and to be honest, the score is really good too. It's a watchable movie in my opinion. It might also be because I'm a Shyamalan fanboy, and at the time I was still kind of in disbelief. I'm like, no, this still kind of makes it.
You wanted to believe, yeah.
It was kind of fun.
Yeah.
But then after his next one, I was like, this is for sure the bridge. Like it was like S-tier movies, and then the bridge is Lady in the Water, where you're like, I could see this being a really good director who made a bad movie, but still. And then all of his other ones are like, oh, you're just bad. Now like he made The Happening. Devil was watchable and
I didn't
kind of
mind Devil.
interesting. It had some interesting twists. He always has a element of faith, I feel like, in his movies, which I think makes him digestible for me. At least the ones that hint on that, like Signs is obviously real big. But Devil also had a big. I mean, there's literally, it's like the devil is there, and the way that you defeat him is by forgiving, like is by like redemption through forgiveness. Anyway, so it was really, that part's powerful. The movie itself a little wonky. Then he made a bunch of other weird ones, like The Visitors or whatever, where it's like the found footage with the kids like going to stay with their grandparents, and at the end you find out that it wasn't their
Right.
grandparents. Those
Didn't
crazy
see it.
people.
Is that what that was?
Yeah, it was like that they were staying with people, and then you like she finally, little girl's like FaceTiming her mom and shows them. He's like, oh, me and then it goes back to the mom. The mom's like, get out of the house right now. Like
I
those are
have
not
seen
my
that
parents.
movie.
That's
And,
chilling.
yeah, so that part hit hard, but the rest of the movie was kind of silly,
Yeah.
and it was a horror comedy.
Mm.
So it was a little. He was kind of going out on a limb to make something weird because it was goofy most of the time, but then there was some serious creepy moments. I don't know. It was weird, and then Old was weird. I didn't like
I
Old
didn't see
very
Old.
much. It was his latest one where they're on an island.
I didn't know he
and-
went this far. I thought he ran out and laid in the water. I thought he finally well, he's done. He's retired. That's a
That
wrap.
guy's just been hanging
I'm
out.
gonna miss him
Couldn't have missed that old bastard.
until the trap, and then I was
No.
like, all right, he's back.
Yeah, I'm ruining this all for
Forgot
Alan.
all about him.
He's like, hey, he can still be good. I'm like, I don't know, dude. Don't get your hopes up. Well, then
What? He had one bad one.
yeah, right.
well, he made Split, which was actually really well received. Which is what's his name? The guy Malcolm
James McAvoy.
who plays like a guy who's just got like 12 different personalities.
That was something to see. I
Yeah.
didn't care for every other part of the movie.
Yeah, like he was shocking as an actor. I mean, he was
Yeah.
phenomenal bit of acting.
That was acting.
Yeah, that it was amazing. But then he made Glass, which is supposed to tie in that and
I'm still
Unbreakable.
forgetting about that one.
And it was useless. It could have just never existed. It just kind of ran flat. The idea was like so close to being there. I'm like, oh
I
my
know.
gosh.
Yeah,
You're,
execution.
Like,
Yeah,
you just introduced this, and then you've just kind of introduced that they're in the same universe as one of your other bangers,
Yeah.
like a beloved character, Bruce Willis. Like, this is gonna be so good, and then it was so flat. The movie itself was just like, yeah, we're gonna kill everybody, and the bad guys are gonna be so brutally obnoxious. It's just gonna be a woman being like, you just don't understand that you're not actually a superhero, and you're like, it's not even fun.
I said I've been trying to
It's-
forget about it, and now
Yeah.
he's like
Yeah.
bringing it
Bringing it
back.
back,
So
bad
it's
memories.
flooding in.
It's awful. So anyways, so there's a chance this is great. There's a chance it's not, but I think it's going to make for a good show.
We'll have stuff to talk about regardless.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. So that's in 2 weeks from today. We'll be doing that. That is our last kind of numbered episode. We will have one episode 2 weeks after that to kind of wrap up season 2. We'll be revealing which short film we'll be doing from the Mad Libs. We'll also be presenting Liam's acting debut of the scene of Ink that we will be running simultaneously with the real scene, so you guys can see which one is better. We've already bought a
So
false
ridiculous.
nose and a balding cap and a blonde wig for Nathaniel
I'm
to
gonna
play
look
the daughter.
foul.
It's gonna be amazing. I already have the clip of you being like, "Oh, I could do it right now. I could act better." There's terrible acting because he was going off on how bad the acting was in
So
Ink.
bad.
And we were like, the scene where the dad's with his mom at the end is really powerful. He's like, I could do it right now. And so like, all right, we're gonna do it. We're gonna have to do it. So
So he's trying to sell it. You're like,
You should watch the scene.
no.
Not good.
it's
Not
awesome.
good.
So you'll see it on our last episode. So after the one in 2 weeks, 2 weeks after that will be our last episode of season 2. We'll be announcing what we're doing moving forward into season 3, and we'll take a little bit of a break, maybe just a 1 or 2 show break, and then we'll be back at it. So excited for that. Alan, thanks for saving the day, my friend. This was kind of
It's a
last
pleasure.
minute
Thank you.
that we kind of forced you to come in here and I was texting Liam and I'm like, Liam, do you have anybody
Anyone at all? Anyone?
that
anyone.
has watched Good Will Hunting?
And I said, what about Alan?
What did he really say?
He was like, I don't know anybody.
I was like, I don't care.
He's like, I don't have any friends, and I was like, oh shoot, that's.
Don't you remember?
He's like, it's me and you, and that's pretty much it. No, we're super happy you're here, Alan.
Adam. It's Adam.
Okay.
Actually pronounced Adam.
That was such a bad drop.
Yeah, it was bad.
It was a really bad one by me, guys.
We could cut that out,
I'm
right?
sorry.
It stays.
I know we're live.
It's live. It's live. So the answer is going to be no. But I really appreciate you saying that. Anyways, to everybody at home, we appreciate you guys. Like and subscribe. Tune in again in 2 weeks. We will be talking about Trap. And everybody else, see you later.